I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. If you go to sharkrobot.com, you can get some Jimquisition merch. We got new merch, including a Jim fucking Sterlingson shirt, and also today we're going to have hats and keychains. So you can go get those if you want. If there's one thing people don't come to the Jimquisition for, it's smug I told you so's. I would never do something like that, and I would never publish something like that. It's beneath me. In fact, smugness of any kind is the antithesis of the Jimquisition philosophy. Some people lately have said that I've been a bit too smug, a bit too smarmy on this show, and I just want to assure you that nothing could be further from the truth, because I would never be smug in front of you. Here is a major tip from me to any budding game developers who watch this, which is loads probably because I am the world's foremost game designer and I literally directed Deus Ex. From a game industry genius to you, I offer this insightful advice. If you ever find yourself deciding to drop whatever it is you're currently working on in order to rush out a new game for a popular genre, don't. Just fucking don't. Here's rushing out a game for a popular genre, right? And here's literally any other idea. Go for the latter. Go for literally anything fucking else. You'd think the downfall of dozens of MMOs years ago would have provided this knowledge already. You'd think the military shooter craze and the fact very few shooters at the time were actually successful would be a bit of a clue as to what not to do. You'd be wrong, apparently, as companies are still compromising everything, risking it all, on some of the absolute worst gambles in business history.
I think most of you know that last week we launched the Culling II, and that launch was not successful. The Culling II was not a game that you asked for, and it's not the game that you expect as a worthy successor to the Culling.
Just days after it was released, the Culling II has been taken down from store shelves following an utterly humiliating release. A hurriedly cobbled together battle royale game that looked like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, but even worse if you can believe it. The Culling II was a terrible shooter game that brought absolutely nothing to the battle royale genre. It was merely there to bathe in the reflected success, to try and carve out a piece of the pie even though there were only crumbs left on the plate. Visually horrific, mechanically bland and technically broken, Xaviant Games' excruciating embarrassment was thrown out suddenly without any fanfare in a desperate bid to be part of the battle royale craze that has been dominated by PUBG and Fortnite with very few serious contenders. The bid did not pay off. At launch, you'd be lucky to get more than 10 players in a map designed for 50. A few days out from launch and you could win games just by standing in the lobby for 6 minutes. Eventually, the highest amount of players I could get together in a game was 3. And you don't want to be on a battle royale map with only 3 players, trust me. What makes this worse is that the Culling, the original, is touted as being one of the earlier battle royale concepts, predating PUBG. Unfortunately, because Xaviant tried too hard and too fast to remain relevant as the genre exploded around them, they couldn't help fucking everything up. The culling was changed so much and updated so extremely after launch that the audience felt alienated. The most common complaint among users is that the game was being mutated constantly to the point where the things that made it appealing were corroding. Xaviant being akin to a painter who won't stop touching up their work until there's nothing but a grey mess of mixed paint on the canvas. Or George Lucas could have just said George Lucas and saved us all some time there. But then, without a warning, support for the culling went away. It just went away and that was that. Fast forward to not long after, and the Culling II drops like a wet turd in a Croydon pub car park. Damn near unrecognisable. It stripped out anything that made the Culling unique, going so far as to switch from a first-person survival game to a third-person shooter, with FPS aiming just like the game it was shamelessly cloning, the aforementioned PUBG. Despite the central premise being a Hunger Games-style game show, there was no game show aesthetic. It was just a shitty, washed-out wilderness map. Again, just like PUBG, with no glitz or glamour to justify the premise. At least Radical Heights tried in that regard. At least it had colour and stylistic gaudiness, even if it was shit. Speaking of, though, let's talk about Boss Key Productions. Boss Key is a tragedy. Really. Cliff Bleszinski was cock of the walk when he was with Epic Games, the man most closely associated with Gears of War. When he broke off from Epic, the world was excited to see what he'd come up with alongside his new outfit, Boss Key Productions. Unfortunately, after quite a wait, the company hit out with Lawbreakers, another hero shooter in the boom period for hero shooters. Without much to offer the world that Overwatch wasn't already providing in spades, Lawbreakers had little going for it but some vaguely interesting character designs and a cluttered UI. By all accounts, it wasn't bad, it was in fact quite fun, but the public sadly didn't want it. More specifically, it didn't need it. Despite its positive reviews, Lawbreakers struggled before it even began, with a closed beta that drew a mere 75,000 players on Steam, with that being the highest amount the game would ever see. The open beta and official launch sported 40 and 60% of the closed beta's player base respectively. The game couldn't crack Steam's top 100, and reporters stated that comparing the game's performance to Battleborn's was an insult to Battleborn. Bleszinski would say the game did better on PS4, but didn't provide stats to back it up, but either way, it's not saying much given how poorly it did on PC. In April 2018, after trying to make Lawbreakers a thing, Boss Key admitted the player base was too small to keep the game supported. The fact is, Lawbreakers failed to find enough of an audience to generate the funds necessary to keep it sustained in the manner we had originally planned for and anticipated, stated Boss Key. It shut Lawbreakers down and left it to die. Then 4 days later, Boss Key announced its new game, a battle royale that had been in development for only 5 months while eating into Lawbreakers' resources, a retro-themed battle royale game show, Radical Heights. Cynical Heights would have been more on point. Radical shite. Tragical shite. Could have said cynical shite, but then it would just be unrecognisable from the name I'm ripping on. Radical lows would also be good. Craig, write these down. Yes, 4 days after admitting a failure to find a sustainable online audience for a hero shooter, Boss Key revealed an online game that needed a lot more fucking players than that. It's the kind of situation that should be a joke. It should be a fucking skit on Mega 64 or something, but it was real, it was actually real. Not even a week, not even a working week. 4 fucking days! And it really was shit. The game was up and running the very next day in what they called extreme early access, and they were right about the extreme part in all the wrong ways. While it just about worked, that's just about all it did. Messy, choppy to the point of inducing headaches, ill-conceived and clearly rushed to market, obviously. It's amazing the game was able to be better than the Culling II, but that's not demonstrative of much. Still, just like the Culling II, Radical Heights was a quickly, desperately contrived piece of shit that existed solely to be part of the new hotness. What made it even sadder was Cliff Bleszinski, who announced the original Fortnite way back in the day, was now copying the studio he'd fucking left. It's the developer equivalent of watching Justin Timberlake leave NSYNC to join an NSYNC tribute act. Radical Heights was out for a month before it, like Lawbreakers beforehand, was shuttered after failing to find an audience. Boss Key Studios would go with it, also shutting down because it turns out trying to appeal to an audience with worse versions of games they're already playing twice is a fucking ridiculous idea.
Insanity is doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change.
So what have we learned from the brutal mistakes of Xaviant and Boss Key? Well, nothing. Nothing will be learned because nothing was learned last time and the time before that and the time before that. Over and over and over again, we keep seeing studios clamoring like hungry locusts in a swarm over hot new genres already populated by mega successful and well-made games. And it's not that you can't try your hand as a battle royale game, or an MMO, or an FPS if you have something unique and interesting to offer the world, or just something really well-made, something to convince those already playing Fortnite or Warcraft or COD that they might need to pause what they're playing and check you out. Just something to convince those already playing Fortnite or Warcraft or COD that they might need to pause what they're playing and check you out. But considering how hard it is, even for a brilliant game, to gain and retain attention in this clogged, saturated, fucked up game market, it amazes me how many games don't even try half as hard as they need to, yet still expect to find success in territory that's long been staked by other, superior developers. Just what was Xaviant thinking with this shit? That's what gets me. We've talked about follow the leader game development and why it's a bad idea before, but lately these companies have gone fucking bananas in doubling down on mistakes that were cemented long ago as historic mistakes. I just honestly wish I was a fly on the wall in the room where it was decided that Culling II was ready for release. If they were just some bottom-feeding asset flipper scumbags, I wouldn't be surprised, but this was a real studio and it thought this was okay. They sold this for $20 even, twice as much as the Slaughtering Grounds, and honestly half as good. After the Culling II was cold, Xaviant announced it would be throwing its support back into the original Culling as a free-to-play game with the elements that made the Culling enjoyable in the first place. Fancy that, going back to what made a series successful in order to keep a series successful. Mind-blowing. After all the embarrassment and expense and sweat and tears, they've started right back where they bloody belonged, right back from where they could have started ages ago and saved themselves all this hassle, which should be seen as a very fucking pertinent lesson, the lesson of all this. Don't go trying to climb the fence to get to the greener grass when you have a garden of your own that just needs a bit of fucking work. Oh, and maybe advertise your games before you release them, how about that? And it will keep happening. Companies will keep dropping whatever it is they were working on in order to chase a trend, even as the trend already has its success stories that will be almost impossible to topple. The industry is littered with the corpses of such games and studios, every fresh idea signalling victory for a few and death for a great many. When you think about it, an emergent trend in the game industry is itself a battle royale where hundreds enter and get fucking slaughtered until a handful are left to eat their chicken dinners. The swiftness with which these games are coming out and shutting down should be seen as vaguely alarming. Even some of the biggest failures in MMO history had a longer run. And this is all happening before Electronic Arts has gotten involved, which is really saying something. Not that I'm ruling out the possibility of EA still forcing one of its purchased studios to make a battle royale before closing said studio down. No pumpkin's ever been fucked so hard that EA ain't willing to stick its dick in it. And now of course you can claim anything with the benefit of hindsight. It's very easy after the fact to say something failed for obvious reasons. Except the Culling II and Lawbreakers and Radical Heights failed for fucking obvious reasons. And those reasons are more glaring than ever, because at least when studios were trying to copy World of Warcraft and Call of Duty, the market wasn't as overwhelmingly full of stuff as it is now. These days you're not just competing with games in your genre, you're competing for the slightest shred of public recognition alongside thousands upon thousands of games released all the fucking time. Constantly, a dizzying, eye-searing chaos dimension full of content, nebulous content, densely packed, increasingly difficult to distinguish. It was always a mistake to release a rushed answer to a popular game, and a huge risk to release even a highly polished one. Nowadays it is, to be quite frank, madness. Madness and stupidity. It's a dangerous time to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Right now, because of that aforementioned saturation, you are going to struggle with anything, even if it's good. So rushing out something hasty to try and capitalise on something right now is maybe the worst business decision you could make. And it's not just true of games, it's true of any entertainment medium right now, including YouTube. I mean, if I jacked in the stability of the Jimquisition to try and cash in on Fortnite live streaming, it would be the stupidest idea ever. It's not what people are expecting from me, and again, I'm trading in something that works for something that has no logistical chance of working. Just looking at it, it's obviously a bad idea to enter a crowded market without any reason other than a desperation to make money. And, well, if you're getting into the business for that, you should probably just work for Activision or something. Like, you need to join an established fucking publisher. Although there is a good chance they will just liquidate your company and make you redundant. So that's a risk as well. Everything is a risk, and risks are important. And it's not good when a studio dies. It's not good that Boss Key Productions went under. It's not good that Xaviant had to put that video out where they apologised and had to admit defeat. You know, I feel sorry for them. I do. I genuinely do, as harsh as I sound. It's just, I don't understand. I don't understand what drove either of them to think what they were doing were good ideas. Nobody else thought it was a good idea except them, and they were wrong. Clearly and obviously. 5 months to develop the game. Come on! Anyway, thank God for me, and I'll see you next week.